Good morning, it's Penuel the Black Pen. Today I'm speaking about marriage. For the longest time, I felt like I didn't really understand romantic relationships. Like most of you, if not all of you, I was conditioned from a young age to believe what romance and what love is by television. Obviously, we watched The Bold and the Beautiful, we watched Days of Our Lives. By R&B, oh Brandy, oh Monica, The Boy Is Mine, Brian McKnight, Whitney Houston, um, all these other boy bands, sorry, or Boys to Men, As Yet, etc. And even novels. I was one of the like gayer boys who read a lot of Sweet Valley in primary school. I think I finished like the whole primary school library, and then I went to the town library and cleaned that out as well. There's people that read Mills and Boone. There's other people that read other romance novels as well. So we're conditioned. Everywhere we look, everywhere we turn, everyone talks about love. Everyone talks about Valentine's Day. Everyone talks about buying flowers and chocolates and going on dates and all this rubbish. So I've struggled for a long time with relationships because even though I've been conditioned, a lot of this stuff didn't make sense to me. And I watched people's relationships fail. I watched people go through heartbreak. I saw Abantu Abadala getting divorced. And I was just really, really not happy. At some point in my life, I think I was in varsity. I decided I don't want to get married. One of the reasons was that I wanted to have 10 children with different women. So I figured it would be unfair for me to marry one and put her through that stress. Another reason was that my parents had had a very difficult marriage, specifically my mom. So I think there was a bit of trauma on my side from there, thinking, you know what, I don't want to be the cause of some other woman's oppression and misery because I've married her. We never really grew up very cultural in my home. We weren't slaughtering regularly. We weren't following the rituals. It would happen like once a year, but it would be while visiting extended family, either on my mother's side or my father's side. And as the years have gone by, I've just come to like crystallize my thoughts on marriage to this day. I went and I studied marriage law, and one of the things I was shocked with was that the marriage certificates and marriage law in South Africa has got nothing to do with love. They don't speak about two people that love each other. It's very much about asset management and dealing with children, if you guys have children. So marriage is very much about how do you deal with assets as a union and how do you deal with children. On top of that, it has to do with the woman taking the man's surname as a default. Obviously, as time has gone by and people have gotten somewhat evolved, so to speak, we now have double barrel surnames, which I hate very much, by the way. People are choosing to keep their own surnames. So a woman could get married but keep her own surname. And then you find that, what was the last point? Surnames. And then obviously there's gay marriages now, which obviously complicate these things as well. But it was literally that. And when you look at it historically, the reason why men were kind of forced to marry women was because women didn't have rights. Women are not empowered. So a woman would marry a man because that would protect her. If this man ever leaves, she has a right to his assets, to his property, and she and the children would be protected because she also has his surname. So she is part of his family, so to speak. I then went and I looked at customary marriages because a lot of people don't understand customary law. For example, in South Africa, you can't get married under civil, which is Roman, Dutch, Western law, and then customary. You can't do both. You have to choose one. And if you want to be a polygamist, it has to be customary. You cannot have a civil wife, as they said, shit. Fuck. I forget this guy's name. I don't think Umfansin. But anyways, where you have a civil marriage and then you have other wives that are customary. You can't do that in law. If you have a civil wife and you want to be a polygamist, you first have to end this civil marriage and then remarry her customarily and then get your other wives. There's also other prescriptions, like the wives need to write letters of consent that you can get more wives. Otherwise, those additional marriages are null and void. We had cases where WHP and his wife or his ex-wife, WHP passed away and his ex-wife felt a right to his assets. And the family fought, saying they hadn't gone through the full process, but the courts ruled in her favor. which kind of fought against customary law as well, because melu lobole, melu mbese, melu wabe, but it's a whole process. Fundamentally, and where I am today is that marriage today is either for people who follow culture or for people who are religious. There's the third part of people that follow the law, but this one is very tricky because what does that mean? Does it mean that because you follow the law when you live with someone, you therefore have to sign some marriage contract? It's whatever. But specifically the culture and the religion makes sense, because as a Christian or a Muslim, if you follow prescription, you're not allowed to live with a woman, you're not allowed to have sex with a woman, you're not allowed to have children with a woman unless you're married to her. Under Allah, under God, whatever the case may be. That's religion. Under customary as well, if you're following the rituals of your culture, you cannot be sleeping with a woman. You cannot be having babies with a woman. You cannot live with a woman unless you've married her culturally. Obviously, today we live in the modern world and people chop and choose whatever they want, which is why it's a huge fuck up and why our divorce rates are at like 70%. Because people want to go fuck the world. People want to fucking have a million dicks inside them. They want to fuck all the chicks at varsity, do all this crazy shit. And then magically one day want to respect culture. This chick who's posted like 10 of her ex-boyfriends on Instagram and vacations now wants to be seen as intombi, ichi at her home, which is this humble, submissive girl. Yebo baba. Yebo baba nyamaz. It's bullshit. You're fucking pretending not just to your family, but to yourself and to your ancestors, which is very disrespectful. And it upsets me to no end. But obviously, I've got cognitive dissonance, where they believe in all types of bullshit and they pick and choose what suits them and then they call it culture, which really is another thing that really upsets me and why I've gone on these journeys of self-discovery and understanding our history and culture and religion. So if you're not very cultural, if you're not very religious and you haven't followed prescription, it doesn't make sense for you to get married because you're probably already living with your partner, but you're not married. You're fat and sit to keep eating. You're probably already doing that. A lot of people are having kids before marriage, which means you've already violated the laws of your religion or the laws of your culture at your home. Anyways, to move forward, in 2021, this is my thing. Marriage doesn't make sense anymore. Women are now empowered. The laws have changed. There are so many other instruments of owning assets jointly. This means that if you and a woman want to buy a bond together, get a home, you don't need to marry her. You can go to the bank and just get a joint bond. If you pass away, the house falls into her. It becomes her home. If you guys ever get divorced, you guys can then decide if you're selling the house and splitting the proceeds, or if you want to keep the house and whoever stays in the house will then be paid their portion. That's all. You can set up a company if you want. You can set up a formal partnership for your assets, whether it's cars or whatever the case may be. When it comes to children, you can put up a parenting plan. Whether you're married or not married or divorced or whatever, these instruments exist now to help people. You don't have to go through this thing of kokilobolo, which is so outdated and is so flawed, and it oppresses black people financially. You don't have to go into a church and get a white wedding and buy this expensive white dress and get the cake and the whatever, and have all these strangers that are just there for the hype and the rubbish and the pretense. Because you guys are probably going to get divorced within 9 years. I think it's 5 to 9 years, the highest divorces happen because people are lying to themselves. So marriage doesn't make sense to me, and it shouldn't make sense to a lot of people. Marriage fundamentally, if I look at it, was an adoption. It's when women were deemed inferior. A woman would be raised under her father's home. So her father would be her God, her king, her everything. She can't leave the house unless he gives her the authority to do so. And the only way to take a woman away from her father's home was to marry her. Sometimes you pay a bride price. Sometimes the father's the one that hosts the ceremony to say, my daughter is now being adopted into a new family. Which is why the woman would take the man's surname. Because you are now going to be owned by him and by his family. Like a child. It was an adoption. That's why when you look at the prescriptions, even in the Bible, the woman has to submit. If you look at the prescriptions in culture, the woman has to respect her man. He's the one that makes the decisions. He's the one that has to provide He's the one that disciplines her. Because we come from a time when disciplining women was fine. Just like we discipline our kids even today. And hitting your kids, by the way, is a crime. There's a law that came out, but a lot of us are obviously turning a blind eye. In the same way that a lot of men and our fathers turned a blind eye when they said you could no longer hit women. Women are empowered today. I don't understand how an intelligent, independent woman that makes her own money would choose to go get married and take on a man's surname and wear a ring, which is like a chain, but now around your finger to show people I am owned. I belong to someone. My surname is no longer my father's. I was under my father's rule or my grandfather's rule. If you had a single mom, fucking bullshit. A lot of you are like, I want my mom's surname. It's not your mom's surname. It's your mom's father's surname. You're constantly taking a man's surname. And if it's not your father's surname, now you're taking this man's surname, which means he owns you. It's never that a man takes your surname. Obviously, like I said today, the laws are different. Things can change. But fundamentally, that's what it is. Marriage is an adoption of a woman, and a woman needs to follow a man like that. And if a woman wants to be adopted by a man, which still happens in rural places, Limpopo, KZ in the Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga, and other places, I think Free States as well, there's still a lot of submissive women. And this is why a lot of men went for young girls as well. Because young girls very easily respect an older man, and they listen to him like a father figure. The guy provides, he pays for her schooling. The guy buys her a home. The guy buys her a car. The guy gives her chores in the house. Okay, mfazi wami, uzopheka, ukline, unakekele ingane. And essentially you become a surrogate, this oven that carries babies for him. When they say, Wandisa umdeni wasekhaya, the man is saying, you are expanding my family home. It's not your home, lady. It's his home, which is insane because that means you're not being recognized. And culturally, the woman can't even visit her old family without asking permission from her husband or her husband's family. When she dies, she gets buried under that family's beliefs. She loses her beliefs and her customs and her rituals. She doesn't bring them into this new family. She adopts these beliefs that this family has. That's adoption. That's like going out and getting a child from somewhere and saying, this is now your new name. Sometimes women, by the way, that get married are given names by the marital homes, the man's home. They get a new name. You have been adopted. You now got a new name. You've taken a surname. You've had to forsake all your beliefs. You've come in here to come and clean and cook and bear kids and listen to this man and do whatever he says. And the reason we've got a 70% divorce rate is because men still have that mindset. And women who are now empowered, intelligent, making their own money and say, this is bullshit. But those same dumb women still fantasize about getting married and are still telling their daughters, get married. I wasn't married. Go get married. I don't want things to be like with you and your father. It's a fuck up. I want to stop this video now, but I'm going to keep re-emphasizing this narrative because I think I need to liberate as many people as possible. The whole wedding ceremony is cute. People get to slaughter, they get to eat meat, families get to meet each other, which you could do without marriage or ilobolo. People wear fancy dresses and take pictures and do DVDs and all this stuff. You go to church and people are crying and oh my gosh. But it doesn't make practical sense. And I think it does more harm than good in the modern world. Divorces are nasty. Kids get hurt. But if your parents were mature civil people without getting married, they're fine. You don't have to get married to live with a woman. You guys can live together and share rent or share the bond costs. You don't have to get married to have a child with someone. The penis and the vagina, as we know, are not locked by marriage. You can have kids. You know, all these things didn't exist before. These are human creations and we've adopted them. And not only adopted them, but we've made them oppressive to ourselves. And we go out and we get huge loans to pay for things that we don't need. And within 2 years, you guys are divorced. It's a pile of shit. Penuel the Black Pen. Love you guys very much. Cheers. Stop getting married.